All of us can benefit from having somebody speak into our life. That's the point behind the book, Sage Advice.
Welcome to the podcast. Here's your host, Craig T. Owens.
As I told you before, I'm really biased on this one when I tell you it's a good book because Greg Heeres has been a friend of mine for over 30 years. I enjoyed working alongside of him on this book. I enjoyed talking to him about this book. This is part 2 of our conversation that we recently had over Zoom. All right, I'm back again with part 2 of my interview with my great friend, Greg Heeres, who has written this wonderful book called Sage Advice. I encourage you to pick up a copy. In fact, let me just tell you right up front, maximizeleadership.com. That's Greg's website. Once you get there, you can find the link to pick up a copy of Sage Advice. You know, Greg, in our last time, we talked about the great stories that you had from your parents and your grandparents, but it kind of struck me, there might be some people that say, I don't have that on my family tree. In fact, maybe they've got the exact opposite of sage advice. Maybe they got crummy advice, or they've got somebody who is an absentee. They just weren't there. What would you say to those people, or maybe what did you even learn in the process of writing this book yourself? How are they going to get wisdom? Where are they going to look to get the sage advice that they need for today?
That's a great question, and thank you for that. I think for most people, they know where to find good advice. They just might have to travel quite far if they're in that situation you referred to. An absent parent, a parent who is too busy, maybe a parent that didn't have a lot of wisdom to give and help that child along the way. No fault of their own. I think, maybe I might throw the net out a little bigger. My parents and grandparents were incredible investors in me. Partly it was cathartic just to write it because of what I received. But I need to be sensitive, as you kind of set it up. It's important for people who haven't had good advice to find it. Find a coach, find a mentor, youth pastor, adult pastor, coach, teacher, someone along your journey of life, depending on where you're at. Someone has advice for you if you're open. I think they would be honored if you ask them. I know when we've had those conversations regarding like business life, you find someone in your office and you say, could you mentor me for the next 30 days? I'm kind of going through something, or I'd like to get to the next level. People love to invest, particularly be asked. So that's what I would encourage those that read the book. I'm not suggesting my book is to make them feel poorly about their upbringing. It actually is to maybe acknowledge, what did I miss and where can I find that?
Yeah, and I think that comes through not only in your writing, but in those folks that you invited to participate with you as well, that you have a kind of a current leader that weighs in at the end of every chapter with a little interview. And I know that some of them said, yep, I had great input from my parents. And there were some that said, my parents weren't around to give me that kind of input, but I've tried to pick up the slack. And now going forward, I'm going to make sure that I run the race well so I can hand the baton off to the next generation. So I think that encouragement comes through in the book.
Yeah, my goal, of course, was to share what wisdom I received. And sometimes it was regarding maybe a mistake my parents or grandparents made, or something that they didn't experience that was that great. So it wasn't all primrose path. I think that's the fallacy of life. It's not unicorns and pixie dust, but sage advice is just, it's nuggets that hopefully can apply to everyone. I don't care if you're in school, career, retired, or anything in between those. I hope that it's encouraging to go ask people, what did you do in this situation? Be open, be curious. I guess that's the challenge for all the ages, all the generations that may enjoy this book. It's looking at your own world and think, did I get something? And did I write it down? Did I acknowledge it? One of the jokes I've had when people have asked me about the book is I got good advice, some of which I did not listen to.
Yes.
And I think that's the truth in the book, right? It's
touche.
the book. Yeah, touche, exactly. So I don't want to come off as the person who got it all right and lived a primrose path and a perfect life. It's like, yeah, I got good advice, and golly, I didn't heed the advice all the time. And in the book, there are stories of, yeah, Greg, you tripped up. There was a consequence.
Yep. Well, and it's 20 stories. Listen, when you guys go to read the book, and I do encourage you to pick up a copy, you don't have to read the whole thing straight through. Every chapter is a delightful story. And Greg brings in a leadership lesson, brings in some places that you can apply it. And then, as we said, then there's a little wrap up with a modern day leader that will kind of tie a bow on this thing. And so you could sit down, just read one chapter, and you're going to have a lot to work with. So again, check out maximizeleadership.com. You can click on the link on there for Sage Advice, place an order, get a copy of the book, and tell him I sent you. And then maybe Greg will put his special John Hancock, his special autograph on there. So I didn't even check with you, but you'll do that for our friends, right?
I'll do that for the friends. I got to work on the cramp from the writer's cramp, but I'll work on it.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks again for joining me. Make sure to pick up a copy of Sage Advice.
Contact Craig and keep up with his blog posts, books, and other videos at craigtowens.com.